Cascade Hoops Talk, Billy D. Join us on Twitter, Cascade Hoop Talk. Today we have Charlie Warner from Grace College. This All-League player was named Academic All-American, boasting a 4.0 GPA while majoring in accounting. Charlie Warner played all 4 years at Grace and posted some impressive numbers. He scored almost 1,500 points in his career, and listen to this, he shot an eye-popping 48.5% from behind the arc during his career. Hey, this guy can flat shoot the ball. Welcome, Charlie. Thank you for being on the show today.
Hey, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Charlie, you played high school basketball at Westfield. That's just there north of Indianapolis, and that's a real hotbed for high school basketball. Fishers, Carmel, Zionsville's all right there. Talk about growing up in that area and how big a deal is high school basketball.
Oh, it's a huge deal here because in the Indianapolis area, you got tons of Division I caliber athletes, even if they weren't necessarily D1 basketball players. You play against Division I football players who played high school basketball. So, I mean, just in the area, you got Carmel, you have Hamilton Southeastern, you got Fishers, Zionsville, Noblesville. I mean, you have a lot of talent around the area. And I think one of the misconceptions is in this area, like, if you don't go to Division I, then maybe you aren't that good of a basketball player. But as you can see, like the NAI, the NCAA Division II, you have a lot of talent that came from this area who are now competing in those leagues. So, no, you grow up playing against guys like Ryan Klein, Gary Harris was here. You had just a ton of Division I talent, and it just that kind of prepares you for what like Crossroads League basketball is about. It's just there really are no night offs in the Crossroads or in this area in high school basketball.
When did you decide that you wanted to play college basketball?
Yeah, I think you kind of always have I always had those aspirations growing up, but once I hit 8th grade, I would say it was one of those things where my parents and I sat down and talked about what is it going to take for me to get from point A to point B, and that is to play college basketball. And that's kind of when I would say I started putting in maybe extra work in the off season that a lot of guys were in multiple sports. Once I hit 8th grade, I started shooting after practice. I started working out. Then I would say from there on, I was pretty dead set on trying to play college basketball.
Graduated at Westfield. Talk about your decision to attend Grace to play basketball.
The college recruiting process was hard for me because I had nothing locked in prior to my senior season. And schools like Grace, Taylor, Marion, those Crossroads League schools, they kind of came in late my senior year around January, February. And so Grace kind of came in late. And so while I'm playing the end of my senior season, I'm kind of visiting Taylor and Grace and Marion. But then my decision to choose Grace kind of boiled down to some of the people I met. I still remember I was sitting in my bed and Coach Moore texted me at like 10 p.m. and I'm about to go to bed. He's like, "Can you come up for a visit tomorrow?" Basically, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I don't really want to do this. It's too late." But there was something that was saying to me like, just give it a try. Don't close any doors yet. So I go up, I visit, meet some great people, and that's kind of how my decision was made.
So you got to Grace, and you were able to play quite a bit in your freshman year. Talk about that freshman year and what you learned about basketball, college basketball, and kind of what you learned about yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So freshman year, the Grace team had lost like 5 seniors. So Coach Moore, Coach K are telling Jarrett, Braxton, and I, look, you might get thrown in the fire here, playing quite a few minutes as a freshman. I think I averaged around 20 minutes per game, and so one of the few takeaways I had was just how much quicker the game was and how much more intentional teams were about scoring in transition and getting shots up early. Like when you play against Bethel, who's playing in the hundreds, that is completely different than how I was used to playing against Carmel when we played them. It was last time I played in my senior year, it was in like the 30s, low 40s.
Wow.
And so it's a complete adjustment. Like I remember Stephen Halstead was a junior at the time, and I was a freshman. And he's like, Charlie, like if you get any kind of room to shoot a three, you have to shoot it. And that's not really what you're taught in high school. High school, you're kind of taught work the ball, get a good shot, whereas in college, in the Crossroads League, any three-pointer that you can kind of get off, if you're a good shooter, that is a good shot for the team. So that was the technical adjustments I had to make in my game was if I get a good look with the percentages that a lot of the guys shoot in the Crossroads League, you got to take that shot.
So your freshman year, you played 20 minutes your freshman year. You went 36 for 66. You were over 50% from three as a freshman in the Crossroads. That was kind of unheard of. Were you amazed at yourself how well you could shoot just coming out of high school?
I would say, just speaking as a shooter, I would say over 50% is surprising. That's kind of uncommon. But I've always felt confident as a three-point shooter. And what the interesting thing was, I actually shot it poorly as a senior in high school. I shot 29%, but the year before, I shot close to 50. I was around 49, I think. And so to shoot over 50 in college was, yes, that's pretty uncommon, but also at the same time, I felt like I had the ability to shoot in the mid to high 40s from three. And the shots that I took coming off the bench were catch and shoot, knockdown, open three. So those were the looks I got, and that's kind of the shots I prepared for in my own time. So that's kind of what I expected a little bit.
Yeah, I'm kind of guessing as a freshman, you weren't you weren't the first option on the floor, so you probably got a couple more open looks than you did later in your career.
It was a different role because in high school you're very used to being one of the option one or two, and then in college I was like the seventh, eighth, and I was really playing off Eric Bowen, Logan Godfrey, setting me up. And so honestly, it took a lot of pressure off myself because I'd come in 20 minutes a game, and then the goal was if I went 3 of 3 from three, then I kind of made my contribution to the team. So it's kind of, in my position, it was kind of stress-free. I was a shooter, or I'd find some way to set myself up for a shot or someone else. So it was a different role, but I kind of embraced it as a freshman.
Charlie, you played quite a bit your freshman year, your sophomore year, but there was a bold line between your sophomore year and your junior year. Your junior year, you came out, you played 35 minutes a game, you started every game, and you scored over 600 points. Talk about that metamorphosis from your sophomore year to your junior year where you really became a very good college basketball player.
It's weird to think about now, just that kind of jump that you don't really expect. And ironically, it was the same thing in high school. As a sophomore, I played significant minutes, I'd say, but I probably averaged 6 points. And then as a junior, I was kind of the go-to. I averaged 19 points. And then similar in college, as a sophomore, I had broken my foot prior to that year. And so it took me over half the season to kind of get healthy and moving again. And so I was kind of in a weird spot my sophomore year. And then that transition to junior year, I go from playing about 15 minutes a game on average to 35 and absolutely worn out after every game. But no, it was kind of a jump that actually I would say if you were to talk to Coach Moore, it wasn't as surprising because a lot of the people in our locker room kind of believed that I had like the capabilities to do that, to be able to be a contributing starter. And that was my goal. That's kind of what I focused on in the off season was, okay, I'm going to be a junior and I'm an upperclassman now. I have to find ways to lead and I have to find ways to contribute effectively. So,
well, you did. You made it. You definitely made a big jump. So let's stick with your junior year for a moment. You guys had, to me at least on paper, a pretty good nucleus. You had yourself, Jarrett Sons, Hayden Deaton, and then also Logan Godfrey was a senior that year. But you seemed to really struggle in the Crossroads. And then this year, almost the same nucleus, you seemed to do better. What was the difference between your junior year and your senior year?
It's complicated, but I would say Logan Godfrey was a huge loss going into our senior year, All-American player. But on the flip side, juniors became and sophomores became juniors. So
Yeah.
Deaton became a junior. We had five seniors now, and so we had kind of been through the ringer basically of just getting our heads beat in the Crossroads League. Like us upperclassmen kind of decided enough is enough. We have the talent to do well in this conference, but it is just about figuring it out. And what we noticed kind of on paper, the biggest difference is our ability to defend people. Our junior year, we put up great numbers, but the thing is we'd score 95 and give up 105. We were able to defend better. We were more mature as a team because we had five seniors. We had Dean as a junior, we had Matt Jennings coming back, and we were able to lead a little more effectively as seniors. So that was probably the biggest difference.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's the old joke, the best thing about a sophomore is he becomes a junior, right?
Exactly. That was very true for us.
There's nothing like experience, especially in a tough league like, Crossroads or GPAC or Cascade Conference. I mean, you gotta have some experience in those conferences to have success. So between your junior and senior year, you had an absolute legend that had recruited you. You had a great honor to play under Jim Kessler. He retires. Scott Moore, who you mentioned a couple times, had been with the program. He's an alumnus of the program. He took over. Talk about that transition.
So with Coach K is a phenomenal coach, and he is a phenomenal person. He's had one of the biggest impacts in my life in terms of spiritually, and it's just kind of the person that you want to be. He kind of leads by example in that regard. And so obviously Coach Moore is a little bit younger, and I would say with Coach K leaving, the actual culture didn't change a ton. It was still foundationally pretty similar because Coach Moore had played for Coach K. He had been around the program for a long time. And so our foundations didn't really change. There were just a few tweaks and adjustments that we made between my junior and senior year with adding, I think, a huge addition was Coach Widener, who had been with Indian Wesleyan.
Yeah.
Very successful player, played in Canada. He added a different element to our team that we didn't necessarily have the prior year. And so that might be like the biggest change that we experienced. Having Coach Moore fill in for Coach K wasn't necessarily a huge change because we had him the year before, but adding Widener was definitely, he gave a different perspective, which was something that we needed.
So you came into this season, there weren't a lot of expectations. You were picked preseason 8th. Did that end up on the locker room wall, Charlie?
It was discussed several times where we were picked. Yes.
You came into the season, you probably were pretty determined. I know Coach Moore is an extremely competitive guy. You started out just a little up and down in the preseason, and you were 3-3. Charlie, tell me how you guys, what was the morale? How did you guys feel coming into Crossroads?
We were not playing very good basketball at that time, to be honest, because we had just got back from Rio Grande, Ohio, and we had lost 2 games.
Right.
That I'm sure we would love to have back, but it took a lot of practice hours to kind of transition into a point where we felt comfortable in how we stacked up in the Crossroads. So after we had a lot of very competitive practices we'd split up in teams, and there'd be several times where guys on the second would beat us on the first team because we had a couple of redshirt freshmen who are very talented. We had Miles Johnson, who had made a tremendous impact in our team in the second half of the season, and he only saw more and more minutes as the season went on. So we were still trying to figure things out with integrating Miles, with bringing Matt Jennings back into the team, and then we had Eddie Gill go down. A lot of moving parts at the beginning of the season where we hadn't hit our peak yet. And so that was a good thing. We started playing our best basketball towards the end of the season, and that's kind of how we made the national tournament.
So you went into league play. As you mentioned, it was a little bit up and down. It's a brutal schedule in the Crossroad. You never got on a long winning streak, but you got big wins when necessary, kept you guys in the fight, kept you guys in the national rankings. But Charlie, in my opinion, there was none bigger than a pair of road wins you got in early January. First, you had to go up Mishawaka, and you took on a really good Bethel team. Talk about that trip into Bethel. taking on Trevion Cruz and that group.
Cruz might be one of the best players I've seen at the NAIA level, and Bethel had beat us the last 7 times, so we had never gotten a win against Bethel. But actually, I would say going into Mishawaka, we felt pretty confident that we could beat them, and we come out guns blazing, and we have Braxton Limbo hitting threes from the volleyball line, and it was a wild game from start to finish. But no, we felt pretty good going into Bethel because we were able to get off on the right foot, beating Huntington, Taylor, and Goshen.
Mm-hmm.
And so just to have some results under our belt, I really think that contributed greatly to how we felt going into the Bethel game.
Yeah, that was a huge win. I apologize. It's Trevion, not Trev. I apologize. I pronounced it wrong. But you got the win there at Bethel, and then you had to go over to Fort Wayne to St. Francis. Never an easy place to play. That game went into overtime. You scored a bucket late, and then you held them down the last 3 possessions. I love a defensive win. Talk about that game.
No, I remember that game being a little low scoring for our conference, and I remember it being really physical. So I remember I caught the ball in the post several times. I thought I'd get fouled. They didn't call anything, and then I get called for a charge. It was one of those games, like individually, where I was never in any kind of groove. But those 2 games at Bethel and the St. Francis games, that was where Jared Sons was playing phenomenal basketball. I think he had like 25 and 12 one game, and then he had another double-double with over 20 points in the St. Francis game. He was terrific, and he really kept us in that game. And then in overtime, I think there were just a handful of points scored by both teams. And I remember Austin Compton, a guard for them, who started heating up a little bit, and he ended up taking their last shot, and Jared Sons was able to affect his shot a little bit, and it rimmed out. But it was an exciting game. It was one of the tougher games and kind of bridge games that we had to win.
I thought those 2 games, being on the road, being against 2 premier opponents, really helped you guys stay in the rankings and hang on to that spot. You talked about being on the road. Where's the toughest place in the Crossroads League to play?
This is a no-brainer. It's at Huntington, and we've never beat Huntington at their place in 4 years. And it really wasn't that close my first 2. So my freshman year, this is kind of the rude awakening to the Crossroads League. We come out and we get down almost 20 points in 5 or 6 minutes. And they had a guard, Mike Bush, who was just terrific. He literally played the perfect game. I think he had 25 points, 10 assists, didn't miss a shot, and 0 turnovers. I mean, they almost played perfect. And so the next year I remember they had a stretch center who had a career night. He had 37 points and like 8 threes. And so we didn't beat them then. Huntington by far was the toughest place, and it was cursed for us. It was miserable to Huntington's gym.
That was your favorite road trip, it sounds like.
Yeah, no doubt.
Hey, Charlie, can you just talk a little bit about Coach Moore? This is a guy who lives and breathes Grace basketball. Like we mentioned before, alumnus of the program. He grew up in Columbia City. Just talk about what he's meant to that program.
Yeah, so the Moore brothers have more than roots in the Grace basketball program. So you had Coach Moore, and then you have Marcus and Matt, who also played for Coach Kessler. So the Moore brothers have been around for a while now. But I would just say with Coach Moore specifically, he's really, really hard-nosed, really competitive. And, like, you start to see that more as he's transitioning into a head coach, that he's one of the most competitive guys that I've met. On road trips, we played board games together or something, and he and I would kind of just go at it just because we're both hyper-competitive, and we wanted to win really bad, whatever it was. And then also, like, I just want to add with Coach Moore is that he's one of the most relational people I've been around. So a lot of times he'll have players in his office, like he tries to do that weekly. Honestly, when I'm with Coach Moore now, we hardly talk about basketball. It's more about life stuff. And so he's kind of been one of those fathers away from home, I would say, during my 4 years at Grace. So he's been he's had tremendous impact on my life, and I've got nothing but praise for him and Coach Kessler.
No, absolutely. You're talking about a couple of very good men there. Charlie, you're known for your offensive firepower. Who's the toughest defender you faced in the Crossroads?
Joel Okafor from Indiana Wesleyan, who graduated last year, was just a bowling ball. He was a rock of muscle.
No kidding.
He's about 6 feet tall, and he's about 200 pounds of just pure muscle. And whenever he guarded me, I did not move him. And then another really great defender in the league was Jeremiah Roberts for Mount Vernon Nazarene. And what he would do, he would take turns guarding me and Hayden Deaton. And it was a breath of fresh air when he was not guarding me. And Hayden had to deal with him. But those were two great defenders that come to mind.
Those are two great examples. Hey, Charlie, I know you don't want to do it, but we got to talk about the Taylor game. So you get into the conference playoffs, and you guys were playing really good ball at this point. Taylor had played a good game against you. I think you were down by 9 or 10 with, under 10 to go. And then you guys started making a comeback. I think everybody knows the story, but Mason Degenkolb, he scored 7 points down the stretch. He hit some free throws, put him up by 3, 5 seconds to go, and then talk about you come up to court. Did you think you had a chance to tie it up?
Yeah. So the funny thing is, I shoot one half-court shot a day after practice with our team manager, and I always shoot it off. So we're down 3. I actually expected them to foul when I caught it, and so I catch it. I take 1 or 2 dribbles going up the left sideline, and I think Mason is coming to foul me, and so I changed directions. And there's about 2.5 seconds left, and I just want to get a shot up, and it's kind of one of those shots that I practice one time after every practice, and it just happened to go in. When my hand, I knew it was online.
They're not able to foul. Warner's going to fire up a 3, and he had it! Got it! We're in overtime! 1.6 seconds remaining.
I couldn't have told you if it was going in confidently. But then I make the shot. We're tied now at like 88 all or something. And then Mason, when he catches it, he flicks it from over 3/4. And I hardly even look at it. And I turn around.
Degenkolb's going to fire up a full quarter, and it's good!
He hit it. Was it after the buzzer?
And it's nothing but net. Doesn't even touch the rim. I'm thinking to myself, what in the world just happened? Because I didn't even digest what just happened with up, because we had been down the whole game in the second half, and so it's kind of one of those just forced overtime, and we could steal one here. And then they inbound it to Mason. He throws up that, and then the next day he's being FaceTimed by ESPN, and I'm just like, you guys kidding?
Did you ever think that was the way you'd get on Sports Center?
Yeah, it was. Right now it's bitter. I can't watch the clip anymore. I watched it that night just to see if Mason had gotten off the shot, and it was hilarious because we had our announcers calling the game, and they're showing up on Sports Center, and a bunch of people on social media are talking about our announcers calling the game like time, and then Mason obviously makes that shot, and it's one of those things where I have watched it since the night that it really happened, but it makes a good story now, I guess, with everything being over. Mason was one of those guys that he grew up in Tipton, which is about 20-25 minutes away from Westfield, and so I've been playing against him since 5th, 6th grade. And, of course, that's the way my career ends and the way our season ends.
Well, you know what, Charlie, I'd love to tell you you'd get over it, but I had a play go wrong when I was 11 years old in Little League that would have won the game. And I wouldn't get out of the car, and my dad came out and when we got home, and he said, get in the house. He goes, in 10 years, you're going to laugh about this. I'm going to tell you right now, it's been 50 years, and that moment still ticks me off. So I'd love to say that you're going to get over it, but if you're anything like me, you'll remember it forever.
Oh, absolutely.
It was part of history, though. And you get ready to go to Sioux Falls. How did you feel about your matchup with West Virginia Tech, a good team?
West Virginia Tech was a very good team. They were they played extremely unselfishly. They were well coached. They were actually similar to us because they clicked a little later in the season. Both teams coached by a new young coach. We had some odd similarities, even though we played a little different. But they were very good because they were very different from a Crossroads team. They were a little smaller, a little quicker, and so we expected them to press us. But what we liked about our matchup was being able to post our guards like Miles or Beat or me, and then Jarrett. I feel like they would have a tough time matching up with our size, and then we were going to have to do dribble penetration. So it would have been a very interesting game, I think.
I can tell you, for one, I was very disappointed. I think anybody who followed me at all knows that was the game I was looking forward to. I had called out both Coach Moore as well as Coach Long down at West Virginia Tech. I thought they were the two best young new coaches in the country. Very similar teams, not much expected of them early on, but they just kept surprising people. So that's one of my big disappointments of that tournament, is that we didn't get to see that matchup.
Yeah.
So talk about that moment that you found out no more basketball.
Yeah, it was crazy because we show up to the arena about 2 hours prior to tip point. The NAI had ruled that only family members would be allowed, and so the rest of the teams are around the outside practice court. There's about 8 of them, and then so we're waiting there for a little bit. And then I see Tanner Rubio from Indiana Wesleyan come over, and he's talking to Coach Weiner for our team. He's heard rumors about the tournament getting canceled because the Big Ten had just canceled, ACC canceled, the Big East had just kind of like pulled off Creighton and St. John. Kind of my stubbornness. I'm like, we're going to play this tournament because we only have family members and we already have the teams here. We just have the parade of champions, and so
Exactly.
I'm thinking we're going to finish this. But then I think more on the phone with his twin brother Marcus next to him, and it didn't look good, just the facial expression. And it turns out he had been on the phone with our athletic director Chad Briscoe, and so I wasn't sure exactly what was going on, but Coach Moore gets on the phone. He pulls us aside, and he could hardly get the words out, and he just says season's over. Canceled the tournament, and it was almost like someone had died. Just the way our team took it, because we had players who had been through a lot of adversity in our first 3 years, and it was kind of one of those things where, and we spent 4 years working to get to this national tournament. We got here, we practiced for 3 or 4 days, and then to see that kind of stripped away to have any opportunity to play, it was tough. It was tough for the team. And I think we had a different story than a lot of those blue bloods like Indiana Wesleyan, Naz, Morningside. We were kind of like the underdogs in a lot of ways, trying to get back to what Grace basketball is about. And to kind of see that unfold the way it did, it was tough. It was tough to comprehend that our last practice had been the day before and our last game had been over 2 weeks ago. It was just weird situation.
Yeah, it's just I don't think there's anything I can add to that. It was just extremely sad. There's no other word for it, especially for seniors. Yeah. So, Charlie, you're 4.0 student. You're majoring in accounting. Talk about what's life for you after Grace basketball.
Yeah, so right now I'm jumping to commitments a little bit. I'm currently actually studying for the CPA exam because I have a job lined up in the Indy area with a public accounting firm that I'm excited for. And then I'm kind of toying around with the idea of trying to play overseas somewhere. But right now I've been in contact with Coach Moore about that, and so right now my life outside of Grace basketball, juggling a couple of things, and then obviously what everyone's going through right now, is just kind of like quarantining yourself and trying to stay safe. So it's odd time of life right now, but right now I'm trying to make the most of it.
You know, you talk about maybe playing overseas. You know, they love a guy who can shoot the long ball. You got to be able to shoot to play over there, so you might have a chance.
Absolutely.
like you say, everything's up in the air, but you've got a very good education to back you up. Everybody has to have that because I always say basketball ain't going to be there forever. But
Right.
You might as well take a shot at it. You don't know. You don't want to look back when you're 50 and say, what if?
Yeah, no doubt. Just kind of seeing what's happening right now.
Well, whatever you end up doing, I certainly wish you the best of luck. I really enjoyed following Grace this season. And Charlie, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, Bill. I appreciate it.